I'm Steve Lascalzo, and this is The Way. Welcome to This is The Way podcast's coverage of the Skeleton Crew series. This is the Season 1, Episode 5 recap and discussion. If you've watched all available episodes as of December 24th, 2024, you're halfway through the first season and a little more. You're a quarter of the way through the second half as well. The podcast episode you're listening to right now is going to recap and discuss Episode 5, but any Star Wars content already available is also fair game for inclusion. If you're okay with that, you've seen Episodes 1 through 5, and you want to hear more, well, let's punch it. Directing Episode 5 is Jake Schreier. Way back in 2005, he did what I'm assuming was a grad film called Christopher Ford Sees a Film. I'm guessing that's the connection he has to get this gig, unless they really love the 6 episodes he did on Beef, and maybe that is where the character of Beef gets his name. Most of Schreier's other work was music videos, but he does have some TV work other than Beef as well, and maybe that connection to Christopher Ford in film school is what got him this job. Showrunner is still John Watts, and the co-creator, Christopher Ford. The writer on this episode is Myung Joh Wesner. I am puzzled how she got this gig. Her biggest credits before this seemed to come from work on Death and Other Details on Hulu, and High Potential is another Hulu series that I guess she wrote an episode for, so maybe that's how she got on ABC and Disney's radar? Maybe the 2 episodes she wrote for Skeleton Crew this season were part of a spec script. Maybe they liked it so much that they put them in this show. It is wild to me, though, that Watts and Ford have 1 through 4 and 7 and 8, and then there's just this 2 in the middle by Wesner for episodes 5 and 6. My Google searches were Wesner, Skeleton Crew, and how did Myung Joh Wesner get her job on Skeleton Crew? You gotta understand, I really like this episode. But I am fascinated. How does she get on their radar? How does she get this job? It seems like she came out of nowhere. Plenty of people can write. A lot of people do. But what about her work stood out or got seen by the right people, especially when it's their project that they not only pitched, but wrote most of the scripts? This is Watts and Ford's baby. So they thought well enough of her to include her in the process.
These boys are so dumb.
Back to the episode. The thumbnail and episode page descriptions available for You Have a Lot to Learn About Pirates on the Skeleton Crew's Disney Plus Episodes tab and the episode page description, they're identical. They both say, "A seemingly pleasant world will test our heroes like no other." The runtime shows up as 46 minutes in parentheses on the Disney Plus show page. Again, that time includes last time on Skeleton Crew footage, all credits, including foreign language versions. That would only be 3 minutes shorter than the stated runtime of the premiere episode and the second longest yet. But the action from first shot to cut to black only runs 36 minutes, 55 seconds. That's about 9 minutes difference from the number that they claim in parentheses. And if you're keeping track, it's 5 minutes shorter than episode 1, 13 minutes longer than episode 2, 5.5 minutes longer than episode 3, and 6 1/3 minutes longer than episode 4.
Yeah? Good.
Director of photography is David Klein. I believe he and Sean Porter have an even split of episodes, but Klein has been in charge of the cameras for the last 3 that we've seen so far. Editor, Terrell Gibson. He's back after having episodes 2 and 3 editing duties. Mick Giacchino, once again, handles the score, son of Michael Giacchino. John Knoll is the head of visual effects. He's a Disney legend even if he doesn't have that title. He's also the creator of Adobe Photoshop. And listen, you can hear more about the production side of things in our episode 1 recap and discussion podcast and subsequent podcasts as well. But most of them are the same week to week, and so we're going to move on to the cast.
What do you want?
What's your name?
There are some who call me.
The first acting credit goes to Jude Law. He comes right before the core four. Each of the kids have been able to see their name follow immediately after Mr. Law's after one episode, but now Robert Timothy Smith has had the honor twice in a row. Following Smith as Neel is Ravi Cabot-Conyers as Wim. Ryan Kiera Armstrong as Fern follows the boys, and then it's Kiriana Crater as KB as last, just like last week. And if I had to put money on the rest of the season, I would say it's going to go in reverse order, and Crater is going to lead next week like she did after 3. Armstrong will be first after episode 7, and then Cabot-Conyers will immediately follow Law after the finale of season 1. Call that an educated guess based on what I've seen from the series this far. Nick Frost follows the core 4 as the voice of SM33. Tunde Adebimpe is back as Wendell, Wim's dad. Carrie Condon appears once again as Fern's mom, Undersecretary Farah. Kelly MacDonald gets a major role credit. She was in Trainspotting, Nanny McPhee, Finding Neverland, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, No Country for Old Men, and she was Helena Ravenclaw in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. It would be hard to recognize her face and all that makeup, though. I mean, she is the alien Pocket in this show. It's her voice that you should think sounds familiar, though, especially if you have 2 little girls who love Disney.
This whole marriage is what you want. Do you ever bother to ask what I want? No!
I bounty hunt for a private client now. No more low-rent guild jobs.
That's right, MacDonald is Merida. Not only in Brave, but also in Ralph Breaks the Internet, the sequel to Wreck-It Ralph, in the scene where Vanellope finds all the Disney princesses.
Ach, lang me your lumrick give me a moose nail, lee your gun away a teardrop in his eye. Hey, she back me, lassie!
Great work by MacDonald. She's creepy in all that makeup, and then her Scottish voice gives a little bit of flavor to Star Wars that we don't see very often. Geneva Carr voices Numa, Neel's mom. She featured a little more prominently in this latest episode, but she has appeared in previous ones. The hotelier is Julie Ann Emery. She was kind of the concierge person. She was Betsy Kettleman on Better Call Saul, had roles on Preacher and Bosch, and most recently had a recurring role on Elsbeth. Ben Ramiaka was the Lanupa security grunt that gets shot and then impaled on the trap. Dwayne Colbert was the Lanupa security veteran that disarms Jod of the short sword. Fred Tatasciore once again provides the voice of Brutus, and Stephen O. Young did the performance in the suit when we saw him in the hologram. Last episode, O. Young got a speaking role as the head of the Hatan army. The voice of Tak Renard is not listed, but the performance for the hologram was done by one of the stunt coordinators, Colin Fallenweider. Jasper Anderson is listed as performing as the Dowager Alien. Don't know who that is. I can only assume this is one of the Myun, that is in the mud baths. That's a type of alien, a weird, really skinny with a long, elongated, tall head. If you search for Dowager Alien, though, and Star Wars, there is a listing in Star Wars Episode 7's movie credits. But there the character was performed by Paul Warren. And this, again, the Myun are the ones that are like, the banking clan will sign your treaty from the prequels. But Paul Warren, a little bringing it back around here, who performed the Dowager Alien in that movie, performed Dr. Quadpaw in Andor. It's weird how some of these stunt coordinators and performance actors get, some interesting roles. And I know they're just doing the performance art, but that's pretty important. Brandon Bales was the Lanupa security officer that questions Jod's identity as Professor Gorlox on the Mudbath platforms. Bales does a lot of video game voice work, so you probably have heard his voice, especially if you played Guild Wars 2. Cathalops was voiced by Patrick Seitz. 4 episodes of the first season of Star Wars Visions under his belt, including the voice of Homan in The Ninth Jedi and Musha in Akakiri. Like Bales, Seitz does a lot of video game work, including on the Final Fantasy VII remakes, World of Warcraft, and he does a lot of work dubbing anime into English. He is also the voice of Zazan in the mobile game War of the Visions, a game which I have played in the past. And I'm pretty sure that Cathalops is an homage to the Lovecraftian creature Cthulhu. Bilal Sharmoog is the Lanupa security cadet that tries to arrest the Jada and the kids on that mudbath platform. He says, "You're under arrest." And then also in the credits are Dominic Burgess as Beef and Jaleel White as Gunter. And I'm assuming they perished in the acid, but maybe not. But if so, that's it for Urkel in space.
Did I do that?
All right. It's time to recap and discuss Episode 5.
He can go about his business.
You can go about your business.
Move along.
Move along. Move along.
We get Last Time on Skeleton Crew, Lucasfilm, Star Wars slates. We head back to at-attin after having skipped that planet entirely in Episode 4. Fitting then that we start with the parents because we didn't see them last episode. They're seemingly at work, analyzing money as the kids speculated in Episode 3. Wendell would be a terrible poker player. He reads nervous all over. He wasn't waiting for Neel's mother, but she arrives on his floor and the elevator chime goes off and he notices. I mean, you'd think that the elevator chime going off, you would just ignore that after hearing that all the time. Well, she's got a device to help crack a code, and he is on high alert, so he goes over. She says, "We need the barrier access code." So she tasks Wendell with stealing the code from his terminal, and oh yeah, don't let anyone see this device. For a moment, I thought, maybe he'll get away with it because everyone seems to be in cubicles and minding their own business, but apparently the security droids don't just see that he's nervous. They also sense a power surge. Good luck trying to get away with playing Minesweeper or Solitaire at your cubicle. Those droids can read power levels remotely at your terminal.
So what are you hiding behind your back?
Nothing.
Then show me your hands. Sir, please show me both of your hands at the same time.
I liked that we get to see just how sheltered and safe this world has been. I mean, Wendell and Numa grew up here safe. So Wendell's clumsy attempt to hide things shows he doesn't have practice. He probably doesn't need it on at-attin. The droids are keeping them safe. We learn in the continuation of this scene, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Fern probably learns all her droid trickery, run memory override, from her mom, Farah.
The coordinator was caught with this. Shall I initiate security protocols?
Delete all records of this incident. Power yourself down.
Farah calls Wendell into the room. What kind of supervisor is she, though? I mean, we know she's not the supervisor, the one in the tower, because she hasn't had any luck going through proper channels, even though we can see the tower in the background in one of the shots. She told the group of parents, hey, you gotta wait, just trust me. But Numa and Wendell definitely took things into their own hands. Wendell pleads with Farah, we're not gonna get help doing things the right way.
Something's wrong.
The supervisor isn't gonna help us. We have to do something. Farah, please.
What's the plan?
I feel like they're going to do something more. I feel like she's going to get this access, and I feel like they're going to send a message, and I feel like that might be a bad thing. We'll have to wait and see. We get the title slate for the show. We see Jod and the kids have made it back onto the ship, and SM-33 is still powered off. They were just on at Akron last episode. We don't see them pick up there. They're on the ship. KB is definitely going the tech route in secondary school because she does something she's pretty sure fixes the droid, one that she just met a couple of days ago, one that was just trying to kill them. Jod and Fern have a little back and forth where she's trying to assert some dominance. Jod plays right back at her. She says, you just want to know about the treasure. He says, you just want to get home. She says, you're scared, which tips her hand. He knows she's scared. She didn't just lose this battle of words. This is where Jod discovers, I can play a trump card later. He pretty much bullies her into doing what he wants.
Just turn it on.
You turn him on. You just want to ask him about the treasure.
And you just want him to take you home.
You're just scared.
You're scared.
KB, switch him on.
33 gives his line, what do you want? That's what he said to Jod in the droid depot when he got switched on at Port Borgo. His other line that he says when he gets activated is, intruders on board. He said that in episode 2 at the beginning, and then in episode 3 when they turn him on after Jod rescues him. The last time he was on, he was trying to pull them limb from limb, though, right? So now he promises, I won't attack you. Those were the old captain's orders. And we find out who that was, and we've heard the name already in this show.
I will not harm you. Those were the old captain's orders. Old Captain Renard.
But what about it?
What? Captain Renard? Attack Renard?
Aye, the very same.
It's once again RENNOD in the closed captioning and the credits. So that's Donner spelled backward, and we heard Renard's ghost out of Jod's mouth last episode. Well, as far as tack, T-A-K, I got nothing. That's cat backwards. I have no idea about who that could reference unless it's Kathleen Kennedy backwards. Kathleen Kennedy. It's a little like hearing Dash Rendar, though, but this pirate is a new creation. I think tack is cat spelled backwards, and I think that's an homage to Kathleen Kennedy. I'm going with that. Later we'll see he's a little like Marvel's The Collector, but also Dryden Voss from Solo, and then, of course, One-Eyed Willie from The Goonies. SM-33 was part of Renard's crew. So, remember, Jod used Renard's name last episode in exclamation, and I don't know if the memory wipe at the end of episode 4 jogs his memory, like, oh, Renard's ghost. Now he's hearing Tack Renard, and he's like, yeah, that was my old captain.
Renard's ghost, I can't believe it.
Anyway, the pieces are coming together in Jod's mind, and thankfully, he clues us in with some expedition. The ship they're on has a name. Now, we know it, and I knew it, because Lego leaked the ship name, and Jod, Wim, Neel, KB, and Fern's names were on the box, because those are the minifigures that come with the set 75374, the Onyx Cinder.
You don't appreciate how incredible this is. Tack Renard's the most infamous pirate the galaxy's ever known.
Calling him infamous immediately brought to mind for me, and it probably will forever, Martin Short and Chase. Yeah, we already used Spaceball sound, so why don't I clue you in with Three Amigos, too?
What does that mean? Infamous.
Oh, Dusty. Infamous is when you're more than famous. This man, El Guapo, is not just famous, he's infamous.
Wow, the infamous? Infamous?
So that's funny, of course. But Jod's description of the deeds of Renard is probably more reminiscent of The Goonies and Mikey's tale of One-Eyed Willie in his attic after they find the treasure map in The Goonies.
Haven't you ever heard of that guy? What's his name? The pirate guy. One-Eyed Willie.
One-Eyed Willie. Yeah, he was the most famous pirate in his time. My dad told me all about him once.
Jod, while he's telling the tale, isn't as excitable as Mikey was. Mikey, kind of rambled, and I don't think it was a particularly good line reading, but I guess Donner, when he had that cut, figured, all right, well, this seems more believable, but it's not a really great line reading in The Goonies. Here, Jod is spinning this yarn like, it sounds like pure fantasy, and we've never heard of this guy before in any other Star Wars project. At best, the most famous scoundrels in the movies and TV series are Han Solo, Boba Fett, and maybe cartoon character Hondo Anaka. More on that later. I don't know if you can put Cad Bane in that category earlier. I don't know if Fennec Shand would count. Maybe there's a Legends character. Rened faded into legend, but we also haven't heard of at-attin before now either, so maybe the rest of the galaxy just forgot about it. Whoever it was, this is a pirate that plundered star systems, according to the legendary tale Jod is telling. How much wealth did he have to have? He was searching for at-attin, a treasure planet, and then he and his ship and his crew just disappeared. Of course, we know what happened to them because, well, and the kids know too, because we saw them find him in episode 1.
Yeah, who cares? 33, do you remember where at-attin is or not?
Sadly, no. But Captain Wren had scanned at-attin's coordinates, kept him hid in his lair, deep beneath Skull Ridge Mountain.
I think you can expect that, yeah, who cares, from Fern to pop up in a few podcasts here and there. That's a great line. They're off to Skull Ridge Mountain. This is on a new planet for us. On the way, in hyperspace, SM-33 tells just how the disaster happened aboard the ship. On the way to at-attin, Rened suspected mutiny. He was right. His first mate supposedly challenges him to a duel. We'll hear that callback later. But before that could happen, Rened's concubine, maybe a Twi'lek, supposedly stabs him. SM-33 doesn't say who the first mate was, so it could be him. Also says Rened locked out the ship controls so that the crew died in a crash. But if the Twi'lek stabs him and kills him, then she's the new captain, right? Unless you have to officially challenge him as part of the code. Anyway, they didn't appear to be a bunch of bodies in the ship when the kids found it. They only came across 2, but pointedly, they came across 2. So it's not like all the bodies just dissolved somehow. Maybe some of the crew survived, exited the ship, and they are still on at-attin. Maybe Rened himself survived. Maybe the tale that we hear from SM-33 isn't reliable, and that's the first mate that was pinned to the wall, not Rened. Maybe there's a legacy where our core 4 actually are descended from the pirate crew. If that's the case, that would ruin a story that I've been trying to write for years. I mean, it's my own fault for not finishing it.
What's a concubine?
That's enough story time for now.
Aw, I don't want to hear about Renon's secret lair.
Oh, how I've missed it. My home. The place of my assembly.
That's a funny moment when Jod refuses to enlighten the kids about a concubine. SM-33 was assembled there on Skull Mountain, though? Very strange to me. I mean, where the entrance to this place is, considering a luxury resort was built there. Was that all there was there? Was just this underground cavern? Or maybe there was a droid depot on top? I'm not really 100% sure. But while most of the core 4 seems content to listen to 33 regale them, Wim wanders off. He's sad. He misses home. He misses his dad. He seems to have had enough of this adventure. He expresses what a lot of kids probably feel about getting that adventure that they want when they run away from home.
It's not what I thought it would be like out here. It's scary and confusing.
Jod, to his credit, tries to comfort Wim. I think he does it poorly. I do think he had some time at the Jedi Temple, though, because Wim reveals to Jod his mom's not around anymore. And then for some reason, that strikes a stronger chord with Jod. He sits down next to Wim, tells him, forgo attachments. Jod knows that Wim loves Jedi because of how disappointing he was to discover that Jod wasn't part of the Order. But if he wasn't part of the Order, why is he spouting lines that a Jedi might say? And especially, why isn't he quoting Qui-Gon Jinn?
Always remember, your focus determines your reality.
Remember, your focus determines your reality.
Interestingly enough, Jod does not imply that Wim can help others with his gift. He's complimenting you. You've got great creativity. He's saying some nice stuff about Wim, but instead, he gives the more piratey answer. Use it for your own ends. Make the world you want. That is not a Jedi thing, as he might have said.
That's not a Jedi thing, the Jedi say.
Wim asks how the levitated data pad works. If you're not a Jedi, how do you do that? Well, we don't get an answer. And even if we know, and Wim doesn't, that not all Force users are Jedi, what is Jod, if that's even his real name? The Cinder leaves hyperspace and heads to...
Captain Renard's lair is hidden in these mountains, where none dare to go.
Welcome to Lanupa, a neutral planet where all are welcome if they keep the peace. Violators will be shot down.
Oh no, what's Lanupa?
Lanupa?
I am so glad that this is not Canto Bight. Instead of a casino planet, it's like a spa planet. Okay. At first it seems all snowy and white, and from orbit, there was a lot of white and blue, so ocean and mountain, snow-covered mountains. It kind of reminded me of a scene from Solo, where Dryden Voss's barge was flying. I don't know. Jod may have never been here, but when he hears what the security patrol calls this planet, he recognizes it for what it is, because he thinks it's funny. The kids do not.
You brought us to Lanupa.
It goes by many names. The Demon's Rest, Battle World, Lanupa.
Do you have a reservation?
Lanupa. I mean, it just sounds funny. It's good for a laugh. But here's the issue I've got. Of all the places on the planet to build your spa, you build it on that mountain? I feel like there must have been some pre-existing structure there, and then Renard's lair was under the mountain at the time. Because if you're building this spa, somebody must have found Renard's lair. I mean, even if you don't know what it is, the entrance in that grotto seemed pretty obvious. I mean, we see what we see later in the episode, and I don't know how someone doesn't find it. Now, maybe you find traps, but if you can find the traps, and you've got all the time in the world to build this spa, you can just dig up the traps. Well, we'll get to that later. Maybe people just truly didn't think that this was real. Jod is first off the ship when the hotelier approaches, and since kids are not welcome on this adult-themed planet, whatever that means, the kids dress up as wise elders from the Bratrick system. The hotel staff is well-trained, I must say. I mean, you go with it until you find out you're not getting paid, right? Don't turn them away. Don't assume that they don't have money. And they probably do deal with plenty of pirates with deep pockets. So don't create a problem until there's a problem.
Welcome, honored guests, to the famous spas at Skull Ridge Mountain. Right this way.
Oh, allow me to translate. The Bratrick physiology permits no basic. Clever
of Jod, they don't speak basic. Well, basic is what they call English. We heard that very early in Star Wars, of course, from Uncle Owen to C-3PO in A New Hope. 33 gets a line, I feel we can use this line a lot to describe Star Wars in the Disney era.
Skull Ridge Mountain? They ruined it!
Skull Ridge Mountain is SRM. If it would have been Skull Wind Mountain, Star Wars... No, it doesn't really work, but it does. I love that line, though. They ruined it. Jod is de-armed by security guards, and as a droid, SM-33 is fitted with a restraining bolt. More member berries for us. Remember restraining bolts in R2-D2 and C-3PO and A New Hope? There is an immediate payoff here, though, when 33 objects.
What is the meaning of this?
Droids have been used as weapons in the past. This bolt restrains all violent action.
Is that Star?
Jod also immediately recovers his weapon. It's a blade that he stole from the pinned pirate on the wall of the Onyx Cinder, but that skeleton had a human head, and that will come into play later. We don't know that the story is true, right? The hotelier talks about the spa amenities, admits, legend has it, pirates carved tunnels, they're used as mud pits now. 33 knows, hey, this is no legend. His anger once again met with a jolt from the restraining bolt. Jod notices, hey, there's extra security around. Why is that? That's because the banking clan has a summit here. No surprise. Bankers want to hold it in a place of luxury. The banking clan, we know of them from the prequels and then the Clone Wars series. In the Clone Wars series, we hear that they're based on Scipio, which is where Rush Clovis is from. That was a romantic rival of Anakin's for the heart of Padme in the Clone Wars series. It's also where the Moon, M-U-N, Mun, call home. That's their home planet. That's the primary race of the banking clan. But I guess there are some humans because Rush Clovis was a human. But also, that is the typical depiction of the race of the Sith Lord Darth Plagueis. That information comes in handy if you know it later, because Jod has to bribe the hotel to get a reservation since credits are king. He takes the reservation of Professor Gorlox. We learn that character is later, or we learn later that character is from Scipio. It's not the only landmine that he has to dodge here in the hotel lobby. He's approached at the desk by Pocket. No, not the Pokemon character. She's a bounty hunter, humanoid, white skin, white hair, even white eyes. She's not just a familiar face to Jod. This is Disney Princess Kelly MacDonald having voiced Merida, and she does a great job. Pocket's upset. Her last encounter with Dash Zenton wasn't great. He stole her bounty, left her to die, basically. Neel had called it out already. He's full of aliases. Jod is probably just another one. Maybe his real identity would give too much away to us.
No hard feelings.
None whatsoever.
Good.
In fact, I tried to find you. You know, just to make sure you knew there was no bad blood. Funny thing, though. No one I met ever heard of a Dash Zenton.
Pocket threatens Jod without being overt. He knows, hey, we got a ticking clock now. We got to hurry. She's going to turn him in, and she does. But apparently she has time for a hot back to soak first. She also tells the kids who she tells, and yeah, it's an open secret now. In front of the hotelier, she tells them that they're kids. Don't trust this Sleemo. That's a Star Wars put down. I think the first time we heard it was Anakin using it on Sebulba in The Phantom Menace.
You scrawny doughpot, Sleemo.
Hey, kids. Don't trust this Sleemo.
Goes right with Wizard, right? Which we also heard from Anakin's friend in The Phantom Menace.
Wizard! This place is like a palace! Whoa.
Captain will be in a fearsome temper if he saw this. I mean, a buffet!
Jod is trying to get the kids, hey, we gotta hurry. He's the one that has to worry, though, right? I mean, if they got arrested, yeah, they'd be arrested, but then maybe somebody somewhere would be able to help them get home. Maybe not. Maybe the kids go before the New Republic and somebody corrupt grills them or kills them. I mean, I just think Jod is still their best bet. So SM33 says the entrance to the lair, it's underground, it's marked with a symbol, Tak Rened's symbol. It resembles the one for credits. It is different. It is not the one for credits, but it resembles it. We get to see one of the sneak peek scenes from before the series started streaming. It was a clip on YouTube. It's the one where Jod asks if the kids were listening. Fern sasses him back.
Are you listening to any of this?
Yes, we're listening.
Oh yeah, what did I just say?
Are you listening to any of this?
A crew of murderous pirates is coming. Do you understand? We have to move fast.
Jod says, hey, we got to split up. But for story reasons, the writer gives KB this line about not being able to go down there. She reinforces it, Wesner does, by having Fern question her aloud. Is it the corrosion from the steam? KB says, no, that's not it. It's just gross. Well, the writer wants Fern and KB to split up, and they're always together. They always go in the same team. So it had to happen some way if that's what the plot calls for. If you want them to split up, this is as good a reason as any. I don't think there's a medical reason, especially since, she ends up down there anyway, and we'll see later it's reinforced by another little tidbit that either the director put in there or maybe it was a stage direction. We'll get to that in a moment. He intimidates the kids by insinuating Pocket is going to claim a bounty for them. There may be. Remember, Brutus put one out on Silvo, as he called him, and the pups, if you remember. Pocket does indeed rat out Silvo, and Brutus says he's sending 2 ships to Lanupa. There's a hut, enjoying the mud baths. Most of those characters' huts, if not all of them, are gangsters from Nal Hutta. The most famous, of course, Jabba. But there's also Rada the Hutt from the Clone Wars series. This one isn't named, thankfully, and it does not appear to be one of the ones that we saw in the Book of Boba Fett. Anyway, a servant is bringing this Hutt food. The Hutt decides to pick him up and swallow the servant instead, and I guess he just ends up passing through because the servant doesn't seem really concerned. In fact, it happened to him a time or two already.
Oh, no, sir, not again. No, please, no, not again.
See anything familiar, 33?
Fern asks SM-33 where to start. Since there's supposed to be pools of acid here instead of muds, she reasons, okay, well, since the mud is supposed to come from inside the mountain and come out, let's follow the pipes. Wim and Neel reuse their Jedi 1 and Jedi 2 call signs from an episode 1. They're talking on the walkie-talkies. Neel, KB, and Jod, they're checking out carvings. And in a blink and you'll miss it moment, remember I said earlier, KB has to wipe off her visor because of the steam. So it was simpler than corrosion. She just didn't want to wipe her glasses, right? The carvings do not appear to be Aurabesh, but they do resemble the markings that were previously seen on the temple on Peridia in the Ahsoka series. Those were ur-kittat, or Old Sith language. I had to look at some old notes on that from Ahsoka. I tried to translate. These do not appear to be the same alphabet as the ur-kittat alphabet one that we see in the Book of the Sith. It's one of the books that you can buy at the Disney stores. I looked online. I looked on Reddit. I froze frame almost every frame that you could see the runes. Some do match letters. I think there was a Z that I saw. Most, though, are variations of what might have been a letter. Maybe I tried to go backwards. I tried mirror images. I tried using AI to decipher the images. I looked on Reddit. No one seems to have a clear idea of what the language is or what letters they correspond to. Just like Tak Renid seems to have been forgotten, so has this language. Security catches on to these people wandering around without partaking in the spa experience. They're just walking around. Jod can't keep up the charade when one of the guards questions, why aren't you the right species?
Professor Gorlox, is it?
Yes.
Professor Myung Joh Wesner of Scipio. Run!
So they run, and while they're on the run, Fern and Wim are in the grottos, and Fern spots the symbol. But they're spotted by a giant alien, Cathalops, a patron of the spa that kind of resembled like some kind of a Furby crossed with a squid. It was very strange looking. It's fine. They needed a strange, imposing alien. It's worrisome enough for Wim to call for help. KB, Neel, and Jod, they're stalling around. We learn of another nickname for Jod.
Halt that, Denton, a.k.a. Man Captain Silvo, a.k.a. Jodwick Zank.
I think the showrunners, the writers, I think they're trying to hammer it home for us. Jod is probably not his real name. Maybe that was his master's name when he was at the temple before he was a Padawan or at the time of Order 66. Maybe it's a Jedi that saved him. Maybe one of the aliases is actually his name. But I think when he saw that Wim thought he was a Jedi, I feel like he picked the name of the first Jedi that popped into his head. These are the names: Jodwick Zank, Dash Zenton, Crimson Jack, Mad Captain Silvo, Jod Nanawood, Professor Gorlox. All of those are aliases that we've heard. I don't think we're supposed to believe that any of them is his real name, but maybe one of them is. A group of security guards stops him on the gangplanks above the mud baths, and KB rats herself out when they try to arrest Jod.
We're not elders. We're kids.
Well, then you're under arrest, too. What are you going to do with that?
Not too clever to rat yourself out when you know kids aren't allowed by saying we're kids, but clever girl that she is, she uses what she most often does use to get out of a situation, a tool. She's smart, resourceful, probably the most calm and cool of the core four, and her quick thinking finds the right valve to open, which blasts the guards with mud, clearing the way. Jod punches out the one that knew that Jod wasn't Gorlox. Then SM-33 approaches, which means they would have gotten out of this situation anyway, right?
The captain needs help in the grottos below.
And so then, Captain Fern led us into battle at the head of the Troik army.
Quite a story. Then what happened?
Oh, hey guys. This is Cathalos.
Back downstairs in the grotto, they're approaching, and Wim is telling a story, and he lied there. Neel led them into battle, not Fern. So Wim can lie, just like Fern. But he can also tell a story, too, because he's reading them all the time, right? Makes sense. Wim would then have to explain who Neel was to Cathalos, or he can use a character already known to Cathalos, like Captain Fern. This is clever writing by Wesner, I think. Efficiency. It tells more than just what's on the page. Cathalos is now a friend because they regaled him with a story. He opens the way to the chambers below while the guards close in, but that's not all. Brutus's 2 ships have arrived at Lanupa.
Welcome to Lanupa, a neutral planet where all are welcome if they keep the...
Nice touch. Pirates don't mess around. So the ticking clock continues. The security must be on high alert now, but I don't know what they're going to do against pirates. Cathalos not only opens the shaft, but gently lowers the entire group to the tunnels below. I wonder if he'll come into play later. 33 tells him, watch your step. Booby traps are everywhere. And it doesn't take long for Neel to step on the first trigger. It's like a scene out of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Only the penitent man will pass. Neel.
The penitent man is humble before God. Penitent man. Penitent man is humble. Kneels before God.
Don't tell me it's a coincidence that a character called Neel steps on the trigger. I just thought that was great. It's funny how 33 and Jod have to get down, but then the laser cuts right over the kids' heads. The kids still don't trust Jod. They're wise not to, but he's also very good at deflecting. When there's an objection to him bringing up the rear, he doesn't object too strongly. He just goes with the flow. He's saying all the right things, doing the right things. And then there's another trap scene that mimics Indiana Jones where instead of coming out of the wall in the light, a guard tosses a stone over the ground and there's a repulsor lift that leads to impalement on punji sticks. The guard turns and sees pirates instead of fellow guards. They're already in the tunnels. He gets shot and joins a victim that was already stuck to the ceiling, probably forever. What an awful fate.
Another fake name.
Fern is smart. And again, I don't think Jod is his real name, but that's what we're calling him for now. And they find this chamber of liquid that 33 says leads to Rennett's lair, but he knows the way, but doesn't know about the traps. He says, step where I step, be careful where you step. But is he not able to help them figure out the puzzles because he was only ever coming through when they were deactivated? Maybe. It turns out the group is going to have to make a sacrifice of some kind. Never mind the science of how this will work. I love these weird traps. I like the riddles of The Hobbit. You're not supposed to have the hardest thing ever it's supposed to be something that people can figure out if they're thinking correctly. It's critical thinking. KB senses it's not water, that it's acid. She also spots the Aurabesh on the ceiling, which tells us about the sacrifice. It's another riddle. I translated the Aurabesh, but KB does it for us, and also much quicker than me.
All who enter paradise must make the greatest sacrifice.
Greatest sacrifice. That means that's... What is that?
Life.
There's a lot packed into this scene. You have a riddle made up by Tak Rened, and so what's valuable to a cutthroat pirate?
Someone has to sacrifice their life.
No. You have a lot to learn about pirates. Tak Rened was known for killing. He didn't think twice about taking a life.
He was bad, so what?
So it's Jod getting to speak the name of the title of this episode. This guy Rened killed indiscriminately. He doesn't care about life. Cold, hard credits. That's all he cares about. So we find out Jod did not spend them all. Of course not. But I think it's interesting. He doesn't just hold it up. He uses the Force. And if you've been paying attention, there is a sound that accompanies Jod using the Force. It's like a low frequency rumble. Maybe this is an audio cue for us and that's it. Maybe it's just so that we know that the Force is happening here. But maybe it's because Jod is not practiced and not at calm. And so maybe that's why there's this low rumble. I mean, I would love if there was a reason for it, but maybe it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's just the Netflix effect, and I'll explain that after our recap is done. Jod tosses the credit in, it hits the acid, and I guess maybe some of the dust that has built up on it, it starts dissolving, because I don't think the credit dissolves. I know, I said forget the science. But what if it was just that the actual Old Republic credit was the only thing that's going to work? You know, what if this acid doesn't eat that specific metal that was used in his day and time? And maybe an Old Republic credit would sink to the bottom, go through a detector of some kind in the drain tube, where he would be able to retrieve it later. It seems weird because, I mean, why would a pirate... I mean, if you're a pirate, you'd want to have someone to sacrifice their treasure for you. You wouldn't want to waste the treasure, right, if he's so enamored by it.
Life was not the greatest sacrifice?
What was? Treasure!
So the acid drains after a beat, and there's a doorway that opens up downstairs. The pirates are quick on their heels, though. But there's a blaster bolt that goes overhead. So somehow they get in, and 33 closes the door from inside. Again, this is great because it has to be 33, because he'd have to know how to do it, because he'd have to have been there. Otherwise, close the door quick. How are we going to close the door? I don't know. 33 just is able to do it. The treasure room that they find is adorned with gold. It looks like Dryden Voss's trophy room from Solo, or more accurately, probably One-Eyed Willie's stateroom on the pirate ship Inferno from the Goonies. There's gold lit by lamps on tables. There's a throne with a giant skull looming behind it. You can't help but notice it. And the skull is not a human skull. It's not a depiction of a human. You know what race it does? It looks Weequay to me. I posted this on X. The most famous Weequay in Star Wars as it stands currently, probably Hondo Ohnaka, a pirate. That is not a real skull, of course. I mean, it is a depiction of one. But the spikes on the side definitely evoke Ohnaka's species. However, Jod clues the kids in. He's been around a treasure trove before, or at least heard stories about him. Don't touch anything.
Stop. Don't touch anything.
Is the plunder booby-trapped too?
Oh, yeah. Spread out. Look for something that looks like a data board, quickly. No touching.
Don't touch anything. But also, look for something hidden. At least Joh doesn't say, just don't touch anything, but he explains why. And Neel backs him up. But as we'll see, Wim is a terrible listener. He's lucky that grabbing the shiny lightsaber that's on this pedestal doesn't trigger a deadly trap. What is a pirate doing with the lightsaber, though? I mean, at that time, the Old Republic time, Jedi were in far greater numbers than even around in the Clone Wars era. So except for the fact that a Jedi would never willingly give up their weapon or sell it, the only way to get one would be if a Jedi assumed it was lost. Because if you kill a Jedi or steal one, that would bring down the wrath of the Order. So who owned this weapon, I wonder? They're supposed to be searching for a data port, but why?
What's a data port look like?
He would have disguised it. Pirate captains never trust their crew.
It is interesting that Joh seems to know so much and know exactly what to be looking for. I'm not sure if there's more to it, but Fern heard the lesson. A pirate doesn't trust his crew. She just doesn't grasp that trusting isn't enough. You actually got to do something, because she doesn't heed that warning. It is Neel that finds, guess what? Food that's out of place. He notices all the other food is rotted except for this nice rib roast that isn't real, but he almost falls through a floor trap when he stands on a chair. Joh catches him, and then it's Joh who finds this lever that rises the data port out of the ground.
It's the captain's log.
33. Access this data port.
Captain?
We're still at the point where all commands to SM-33 have to go through Fern. I thought it was weird that a few times we've heard 33 say searching while he's searching.
Searching.
The Netflix effect. I just saw social media posts, and maybe you did too, about how Netflix is telling scriptwriters to write what the characters are doing into the dialogue so that people could watch TV without paying attention. TV, when I was in school, was always taught it's a visual medium, you show, don't tell. That was always the mantra. It feels as like we're heading back to the days of radio, where it's tell everything, whether through sound or actual exposition.
Oh, that's it! Oh, at-attin.
33 finds the coordinates to at-attin. The Aurabesh can be translated. It does indeed say at-attin, so the kids can finally go home. Joh finds out about the treasure planet. Now he wants to learn how to take care of the threat that is just outside his doors.
You have access to this system?
Aye.
Refill that chamber with acid.
We hear the pirates outside being doused with this acid. So do they survive? Do they drown? I would guess some die, some survive. Gunter is credited with the scream at Silvo in the closed captioning, so maybe he survives a little longer? But now that that's done, the threat outside the doors is taken care of. Now the kids and Joh are going to head off to the ship to go home, right?
Now, the treasure. Is it really on the planet? Is it on at-attin? Is it real?
Treasure is mentioned in the captain's log.
First, Joh wants to know, is there really treasure on at-attin? Is it real? Well, best to ask the captain himself. 33 calls up a hologram of Rened, who has a very piratey voice, but his image doesn't show his face. So is that for us, the viewers, so we don't know the secret identity yet? Or is it because they haven't settled on a look? It's far more likely those two things than the hologram is just a little corrupted just for his face. Also, we know this is a male, which I'm shocked Disney didn't force their usual message. I mean, we've had a concubine and a male pirate being the threat. It's amazing.
No one knows it is the last old Republic mint.
So it turns out at-attin is an old Republic mint. Simple is usually the best, right? Jod knows what a mint is, but the core four have to have a little discussion for the younger viewers of Skeleton Crew, and unlike Concubine, they explain what is a mint.
It's a mint again.
It's where they make money.
Make money? You can have infinite money.
Whoa! I guess it is the planet of eternal treasure.
Mystery solved. It's not really disappointing. It's just I was just hoping for a little bit more than just being a mint, but it makes sense. This is probably the most believable thing that would fit secrecy of that level in this universe. I mean, the kids knew parents worked with money. They had lessons about it all the time in school. If they were making money, though, how does that get to the outside world somehow? It can't be a complete secret. The planet stayed safe. So unless it's droid-only exit and entrance from the planet, there's no other way to do it. I mean, we're going to have to wait for the hows and the whys later, but it really does call into question, if you're making money that is going to be used outside at any point, somebody had to leave the planet. Jod now has to take care of the threat inside the doors. He has had enough running things through Fern. He challenges her through the pirate code, and 33 is going to referee this pirate challenge. Immediately, he calls on Fern to yield. Jod is a scoundrel, but he doesn't want to hurt these kids.
I invoke my right to challenge the captain as per the code.
The challenge is thrown. Hand-to-hand combat to the death.
What? 33?
I'm sorry, Captain. I must follow the pirate's code.
To say you yield.
I can't help but wonder if he would have commanded their capture at the end of the scene if Fern had just gone along and very quickly yielded. He tells her to yield 4 times. He even lets her turn her back on him, and she grabs a weapon. It's a big mace. It's gilded. It looks like it might have jewels on it. He never harms her, but he disarms her with the Force. He stops the mace from hitting him with the Force and knocks that out of her hand. He puts a knife to her throat. This is an actual threat.
I'm really sorry about this. I really am. You have to actually say it.
You're a grown-up! You can't fight us, we're just kids! It's not fair.
You have to give credit Fern for not backing down, but think about it. She should have backed down a lot sooner. I mean, maybe she could have used her wits to make him swear some kind of an oath that binds through SM-33, through the code or something, before you yield. But instead, she's stuck. And then cue the hero music. Wim steps forward. I was hoping he would, and they are giving it to us right. He didn't have to run for the lightsaber. He already took it. And again, he's lucky that there wasn't like a trap like Indiana Jones found in the Raiders of the Lost Ark with the gold statue at the beginning. I picked up the saber and then something, No, Wim is just going to act out what he has read about each night in those books on his data pad. He's going to be the hero.
Careful, Wim. It's not one of your stories.
No. Perfect way to give us Wim stepping up, but then having him realistically fail. He doesn't realize that he's holding upside down the lightsaber, but at least he doesn't cut a hole himself or lop off a limb. No, the lightsaber just clatters to the ground, and then Wim goes and huddles with KB and Neel because there's nothing they can do.
Oh, you.
Okay. I'm sorry, Fern. Jod is the victor. Orders to Captain Jod.
If Fern had yielded earlier, maybe Jod doesn't feel the need to put them in custody. But Fern took a swing with a mace, and then Wim had the lightsaber. At this point, it's the right move for him. But again, I think he would have taken them home. They just don't give him a chance to live up to the oath. After he orders SM-33 to take them prisoner, 33 is apologizing. I'm sorry, kids, I got to do this. But Wim remembers the trap that Neel accidentally discovered at the table earlier.
I'm sorry, kids. Captain's orders.
Wait, I know!
Now look, if Wim had asked the kids, or even just Fern, they would have told him, you're crazy. What if this leads to certain death? Now, it won't because they're characters, but maybe this path does usually lead to certain death, and the acid that usually gets drains to fill the trap below when it's not in use above, and then vice versa. So maybe this is just an escape hatch when you've set all the traps behind you. But the point is, Wim does not wait and does not think this through. There's no immediate consequence when Neel triggers the trap earlier, but you're telling me instead of being prisoners and maybe still going home, Wim is going to risk death for them all and have no way that you know of to go home? It's going to be very interesting to see what they say at the beginning of episode 6 because, well, again, we know they're not dying here. The series can't end. The episode isn't over even. Wim pulled that saber out, and it didn't work so well for him. It clattered to the ground. Jod, as it so happens, knows how to wield a saber. He grabs it with the force and turns it on. I don't know about you, but this episode felt like a big rebound to me. Great writing. It moved along quick enough to be an enjoyment for both of my kids. Even my youngest is back into Star Wars, asking if we could watch another episode immediately after seeing that one. Kids, right? They only know binge watching. I truly think it's a lock. Jod has to have been a Jedi trainee of some kind. I think there's a lot more to Rened too. I think the ship being found in the state it was on at-attin, I think the story is not as simple as SM-33 has told us, or even Jod knows from legend. Maybe Rened survived along with some of his crew. Maybe they survived and he didn't. But there's something to the ship being buried on at-attin because SM-33 may have his memory back, but all of the details don't add up. There weren't bodies everywhere in the ship. We only saw 2. So there's mystery about Jod's upbringing. There's mystery about why at-attin survived the first Rened invasion. And we still don't know who the supervisor is in that tower, or if it's a droid or a program. And episode 6 may have the answers. It drops December 31st, 2024. And in case you don't know, that's New Year's Eve. Just like last week, with Christmas Eve, there's a good chance we don't have a review or recap and discussion until the weekend. There are 3 more weeks to go, with the finale streaming on January 14th, 2025, so send in your thoughts. Email goes to thisisthewaypodcast@gmail.com. We have Instagram, X, and Facebook accounts with the address @thisisthewaypod. Thank you for listening to This Is The Way Podcast's recap and discussion of Skeleton Crew's 5th episode of Season 1. I'm your host, Steve Lascazzo, and this is The Way. May the Force be with you, always.